from History Savior Land. It is a cold Monday morning here in Alabama. Man, I thought I would never say those words. Feels great this morning here. It is a crisp 63 degrees, which is great. The summertime has finally left. So I am more than happy to see it go. And this morning we are on our way to Pensacola, Florida. We'll have more on that in just a few moments. I'm going to save that for when some more people jump on here. And hopefully you can hear me just fine on the stream. But yeah, it's been a rough past week, as most of you guys already know. So all that's over with, and now it's time to press forward. And we are, man, I'm telling you, jumping right into it this week. I mean, it's going to be a long 2 weeks here for me on this channel, and for content, and for other work too. It's going to be a long next 2 weeks, very long next 2 weeks. Truck stinging here. I probably need to put my seatbelt back on. I just got out and got coffee. Sometimes, you know, like everybody else, I forget to do that. There we go. Put the old seat retainer back on so we don't fly off the windshield. So, yeah, sorry, excuse me. But we leave for New York on Saturday. This coming up Saturday, we are leaving for New York. We are headed to first Oswego, New York. We'll be flying into Syracuse, New York, and we will be visiting some very, very neat French and Indian War fortifications coming up in the next week on the channel. We'll also be talking a lot of American Revolutionary War history. And one of the places I'm slated to visit, I fly out on Saturday, and this coming up Saturday, and we are going to spend about a week in upstate New York. We are going to hit Fort Ontario, which is one of the fortifications on the Oswego, right on, or it's in Oswego rather, it's right on Lake Ontario. You can actually see the Canadian border across, or it's right across. I don't know if you can see it or not. But anyway, the fortification has a really neat history. It has history dating back to the French and Indian War. It was there during the American Revolutionary War. It was also there during the Civil War, and saw some action for all of those: the Spanish-American War, World War I, and then World War II come along. And this is a part of history that honestly I did not know about. As big as a World War II buff as I am, this is what I mean when I tell you guys, you know, as history nerds and enthusiasts, we dive into history, but we never know everything. And one of the things I have never known about is about Fort Ontario's role during World War II, which was an internment camp for Jewish Holocaust survivors from Europe. And there was only 900 of them that were interned at this camp. And it was the only camp during World War II in the United States that brought in Jewish refugees during World War II. And the question I started asking myself this past week when I was researching this a little bit more and finding out more about it was, why wasn't there more? So there is a very, very, really popular journalist back in the 80s who brought this to light in a documentary called Safe Haven. And he talks about Fort Ontario. Now, I got on YouTube and I started looking up, you know, Fort Ontario, Jewish Holocaust survivors, Fort Ontario, Jewish internment camp, and I couldn't find a whole lot. I mean, there's not much there. And one of the other things I found out is no one has really did any in-depth YouTube videos from this place. You know, JD hasn't been there yet for the History Underground, which is you know, cool, because he's been everywhere. So it's pretty cool to find a place he hasn't hit yet. So, but, you know, I would like to see JD go there, because he could bring another big light to it, especially maybe get Eric Dorr involved. But there's not much out there about Fort Ontario and its role as a Jewish internment camp during World War II. And there was a documentary, like I said, called Safe Haven that was put out by a journalist in New York in the 80s, the late 80s. And other than that, just, you know, besides fort videos from the fort itself, you know, where they briefly mention it, There's not much there. And in the 80s, when this journalist found out the information about Fort Ontario being a Jewish internment camp, he didn't know that either, and he was from the area. What he ended up doing was, during that time, you didn't have the internet, of course. We couldn't just Google everything in the 80s. So he ended up going to the National Archives, and he found a 50-second piece of video from that camp at Fort Ontario that highlighted the Jewish refugees coming into Oswego by rail, and it was only 50 seconds long. So what he ended up doing is doing a lot of research, and he ended up putting together an excellent documentary on that. And other than that piece, that's all I've really ever seen is went in depth into Fort Ontario. There may be something out there. I may not have found it yet because I've only been researching this a short period of time. So unfortunately, Fort Ontario is closed to the public when we go this next week, but I have got special permission to go inside of Fort Ontario, and I will be going inside with one of the site's historians. And he's going to take me through, explain the history of Fort Ontario a little bit. And one of the things I really want to hit on, of course, is the American Revolutionary War history and French and Indian War history stuff, because that's what we're going there for. Sorry for the bumpiness here, guys. Crossing some railroad tracks. So, of course, we're going to hit that history. But I also want to hit this history of Fort Ontario during World War II. And, man, I hate this road. So we're going to hit that. And we are going to talk a lot about that. So you're going to be getting several different videos from Fort Ontario because, you know, I don't really want to incorporate that in one video with the American Revolutionary War history and French and Indian War history. And it would be nice for Fort Ontario to be on the pedestal with just that World War II history, remembering those Jewish Holocaust survivors that were interned there at Fort Ontario. And this is a piece of history, like I've been telling you guys, we find stuff all the time. This is a piece of history I had no idea about. But I started asking myself the question. This was the only internment camp for Jewish survivors during World War II, and it was put here at the height of D-Day, which may be the reason why it didn't get as much, you know, publicity as it did. As a matter of fact, even in the local newspaper there in Oswego in the Syracuse area, when Fort Ontario brought in these Jewish Holocaust survivors and refugees, they put it, I think, on like the 5th page of the newspaper. It wasn't even front page news for those guys, which is just crazy. But then I started looking at the dates of this. It's happening around the same time as the D-Day landings. So, of course, the D-Day landings is overshadowing the news of Fort Ontario bringing in these Jewish refugees. So that is going to be really neat to bring to light, and really neat to bring to you guys, and maybe preserve a little bit of that history of Fort Ontario, and maybe more people will learn about this. I'm sure there's been books written on the subject, but as far as video documentation, other than a Safe Haven and a few little short videos, like I said, it's definitely not out there a lot. And it's something I didn't know. And it was the U.S.'s only internment camp during World War II for Jewish refugees, which brought me to the question, the plans for this thing. It was dramatic, bring in more. There was only 900 people during the entire war that was brought in for a Jewish internment camp as refugees, helping them to escape Europe during World War II. No, of course, they overshadowed the news. That has nothing to do with the camps bringing in more refugees during the course of the war as the war drug along. So why didn't FDR and his administration do more to bring them in? And that's something that I really want to take a deep dive into, is why Franklin Delano Roosevelt did not make an effort to bring in and establish more of these Jewish internment camps to help Jewish refugees escape to the safety of the United States. If they did this once, why did they only do it once and not anymore? And there's a lot of questions to be answered there, and there's a lot of factors that could go into it. So it's going to be really neat to dive into that history. So today we are headed to Pensacola, Florida on today's adventure, and we're going to film an episode of History Saver today. We are headed right now to NAS, Pensacola, Florida, Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida, the home of the Blue Angels. And I wish I could say I am filming the Blue Angels today, but I am not. We are filming something very cool, though. We are going to a place called Fort Barrancas. Fort Barrancas was, or still in existence there, by the National Park Service. It is ran by the National Park Service on the Navy base of Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida. It has been closed for quite some time due to events that happened in Pensacola, Florida, with some things I'm sure you can look on the news and find out what I'm talking about. I don't want to mention it too much here on YouTube, but it's been closed for quite a while. We're headed to Fort Barancas today, and one of the things that we're doing is we're meeting up with a friend of mine, historian John Weaver, who is an author and a famed historian when it comes to Civil War third system fortifications. And he's probably the best in the entire world when it comes to third system fortifications and his knowledge of them. So we're going to meet up with John Weaver today. He's doing some special guided tours of Fort Barancas, and we are going to join him. We're going to learn a lot about Fort Barancas and its role during the Civil War, prior to the Civil War, and after the Civil War, from one of the best in the country. So that's going to be a very neat experience. John Weaver is a very, very, very great guy, and I can't wait for you guys to meet him here on the channel. If you've never taken one of his tours of one of the third system fortifications, he does them all over the country, you really need to do that. So we're going to take you behind the scenes today and show you a little bit of that as we can today. So we're just jumping with both feet right back in at the start of Monday morning. My grandpa's funeral was yesterday, so all that's over with. And it's time to move forward. You'll put a boot up my butt if I sit here and mope. So we're jumping both feet in, I guess, as you can say. We're headed to Fort Barancas today to bring you a very special episode from there. We're headed to upstate New York on Saturday. We'll be there for the duration of next week, and it's going to be a lot of work here on History Saver. What else is coming from New York besides Fort Ontario? I've told you a lot about Fort Ontario, where we're also going to Fort Stanowitz in New York as well, upstate New York. I believe it's in the Utica area, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but we are going to Fort Stanowitz, and we are going to another place, I think it's called Fort Bull, if I'm not mistaken, on that as well. It's a French and Indian War fortification, and there was a pivotal action that happened there. And it's a place that's also almost lost to history in upstate New York, where it concerns American Revolutionary War history and French and Indian War history. So Fort Bull, Fort Stanowitz, Fort Ontario, and a lot of other also cool locations from upstate New York. And for me, I'm more excited about getting Tim Hortons than I am almost anything, which is, I think, pretty bad, but I love Tim Hortons, and I'm able to get some Timmy's while I'm there. So I'm really excited about that portion of that trip. So a lot of content coming, guys. A lot of content. We still have a lot of Savannah and a lot of Charleston to get to you. I haven't had time to edit as much on those because just of everything going on. And I want to make sure those episodes from Savannah and Charleston are absolutely just spectacular for you guys. And that would be on the lookout for this week. You will see an episode from Savannah later this week. You may actually see a few episodes this week. So just stay tuned to the channel for more of Savannah, more of Charleston, where it concerns the American Revolutionary War and the Southern Campaign of the Revolution. Today we're hitting Fort Barancas in Pensacola, Florida. Saturday we're headed to upstate New York, and we've got a lot of content coming. What's going on in the world of me besides everything else that has been going on that you guys know about? Because honestly, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I just want to put it in the back of my head and move forward with what I got to do this week and next week. And besides that, what has been going on? Well, a lot of research, a lot of reading. I've been reading some really awesome books where it concerns Fort Ontario, Fort Stanowitz, some of the places we're going next week in upstate New York. I do a lot of research before I go to these places, a lot of reading. And I know JD from History on the Ground. There we go. Yeah, it's moving slowly but surely. So James from Project Past is doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, we're reconnected now. And he does a lot of research where he goes. I know JD does a ton of research before he goes to places. And it's no different here. You know, I love to read. I love reading, you know, I love reading before I ever had this channel. And now that I have this channel, it just gives me more of an excuse to read more, which is pretty awesome. Because at least I want to know something before we go. And it's no different with Fort Barancas this morning. I know a lot about Fort Barancas, but I don't know a lot about Fort Barancas. Fort Barancas, where we're headed to Pensacola, Florida this morning, for instance, has a long history. It was a Spanish fortification before the Civil War fortification was ever established on site. It is also on a naval air station in Pensacola, Florida. So it has a very long history, probably one of the most historic fortifications, in my opinion, in the United States, just because of its location and for what is there today. I mean, when you break it down, the site itself, well, you just can't get any better than that. This site has had history happen on it before the American Revolutionary War. And a lot of people don't think about Pensacola, Florida when they think about the American Revolution. Well, we'll be hitting on some of that today as well, I hope, in this episode. If not, it'll be on a upcoming episode. But yeah, we're headed there today to film, and it's going to be a very cool experience. Meeting up with John Weaver, our historian, that's we're good buddies with, one of the foremost minds in third system fortifications in the United States. He is one of the foremost experts on this, and he is really good. He has a couple of books. We'll show you those books in that episode, and how you can pick those books up. It has become a very popular book, actually, and I'm even going to buy another copy today just because I forgot mine at home, and I need him to sign one for me. I've been friends with him for quite a while, but I've never had him sign a book, so we're going to do that today. And then we may actually get some other things to give away here on the channel. I've been putting together a pretty big package for you guys for a giveaway from every place we're going. And I've got things in there from Gettysburg. I've got things in there from Savannah and Charleston. And, you know, I'm going to have some things in there from upstate New York. And I may give away more than one prize pack. I don't know. We're going to have some History Saver swag in there as well. So it's going to be an epic prize pack. And I'm just waiting for the right time to give it away. And I want to build it up a little bit. So, but you guys really want to stay tuned to the channel for that, because one of the items that's going to be in this prize pack that I will go ahead and tell you is something you've already seen if you remember back, is the Hunley coin from Lieutenant George Dixon, the replica of the coin that he held in his pocket at Shiloh when the bullet struck it, and his wife had given him this gold piece to keep in his pocket, you know, just as a token from her. And a bullet during the Battle of Shiloh struck it when he was in his breast pocket, and he carved on the back of it, as legend said, "My life preserver Shiloh," and the date and his initials. Well, they didn't know if that story was true until they raised to Hunley and started doing the archaeological excavations and found the coin. So we have an exact replica of that coin cast from the original, and one of you will be getting that coin. So you definitely want to stay tuned to the channel for when we do the announcement of when and how you can enter to win that History Saver prize pack, because it's going to be pretty large. It's going to be probably one of the biggest prize packs I've ever given away on this channel, and I've given a few things away over the course of time, but this is probably the biggest as far as, you know, dollar amount, I guess. But there's going to be stuff in there from Gettysburg, Savannah, Charleston, stuff from the Hunley, stuff from upstate New York, probably some stuff from here today in Pensacola, Florida in this episode. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in it. We're probably going to give away more than one pack, and I'm also including a bunch of History Saver swag in there with it. I think I'm going to throw a History Saver coffee cup in, and also a channel. And another thing, I've got t-shirts I've got to give away, and I've got some people that's asked for some t-shirts. I was giving them away in Gettysburg. I told them to send them one, and I have failed to do that yet because I've been waiting on a t-shirt order to get here. It got backlogged, and then it got lost in the mail, and it's on the way. So if you're one of those people that met in Gettysburg, promised a shirt, you know, when I ran out, they're coming. I've just been waiting on the new shipment to get here. And honestly, now I have gotten everything where I can actually make my own and not have to rely on a company, and I can make my own merchandise. So I think that's what I'm gonna start doing. And but for this History Saver prize pack, well, you're all gonna be getting it. Traveling to history, President, as always, bud. Thanks for joining us, man. If I lose you guys, I am so sorry. We're going down a very sketchy road, but we are traveling to Fort Barrancas today, upstate New York on Saturday. So you guys have a lot of content coming. And I'm telling you, we're just jumping right back into this week, feet first, man. I mean, head first, feet first into this thing. And JD from the History Underground. Let's see what's going on around YouTube with the other content creators. Traveling to History has been doing a lot of stuff. You guys just see a comment from him there. He's been doing a lot of cool stuff on his channel as well. They have been all over the place as well. And my favorite thing in my spare time to do, if I'm not reading and researching, is to watch other YouTube channels. I'm a huge fan of just about everybody. Just like all of you guys, I'm fans of channels. And they're one of my favorite to watch. Project Past, James Project Past. He's got a lot of cool stuff coming up. We haven't talked the past week because of everything going on, and he's been busy as well. But I know he's got a lot of cool stuff coming up. He's getting ready to go back to Gettysburg, which, I wish I was going back to Gettysburg, but, all these trips slated for me, it just isn't feasible for me to go back to Gettysburg at this moment because I got other places I've got to go to do content for this channel. So we're going there. Also, JD from the History Underground, they are traveling back, I think today, from overseas in Europe, and they have been to a lot of cool places. So yeah, JD has some cool content coming, but he's always got cool content coming. Vlogging Through History, Chris has been over there as well. They've been doing a tour over there. I think Chris is, I don't know if Chris is, I think Chris is still over there. Traveling History, working on a lot more content as we speak, but I'm busy as heck, unfortunately. I know the feeling. Guys, if you're a fan of what, I do, what all of these other content creators do, JD Traveling History, Project Past, Vlogging Through History, Center VK History, all of these different YouTube channels, if you're fans of them, you don't see the work that goes in. I mean, the traveling and filming at places, a lot of people, have said to me, well, I bet that's a lot of work. Actually, traveling and filming is actually the fun part. That's the part I enjoy. It's the editing that kills you. It's having the time to edit all of this content. Filming the content's easy. Going to get the content is actually pretty easy. It's a lot of fun. But editing, well, it's a feat because you're steadily out gaining content, traveling, and you got to somewhere working a time in there to sit in front of a computer for hours and edit. So it's a lot of work, and I know I struggle with that. I'm sure JD struggles with that. I'm sure Chris from Vlogging Through History struggles with it, and I know James from Project Past. We've had conversations with this. It's fun to sit there and edit. It is, but it's just finding the time to do it, and it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of work that goes into these videos. And that's the reason why I'm steadily saying, support these guys, subscribe to these guys, like these guys' videos, because for every minute you see of video, they have put in probably close to an hour of edit time. I mean, honestly, it is a lot of work. And that's the way we say video production breaks down, in outside of YouTube and my film career, is for every minute, shot, it's a lot of time shooting it, and it's a lot of time editing. So filming is the easy part, editing is the hard part. See, Dustin, safe travels up north. Dustin, thank you so much, man. Really good friend, personally and to the channel. So Dustin, sent me a lot of uplifting text messages over the past week, and it's actually been a welcome treat, and it's helped a lot. So but yeah, we're headed up north. Traveling History got a lot of content coming. Be on the lookout for that. He's busy as heck too. So, I mean, we're all busy. Just hanging there with us, guys. I mean, we have life, outside of here. We've got bills to pay too, and it's it doesn't get any easier sometimes. And another thing I wanted to bring up to you guys, as long as the signal's gonna hold out here, and if I drop, I'll be right back with you guys. Just stay on here, don't leave. It may take a second, but I'm coming right back. We're going through a sketcy road, but the signal is going to get really good up here again, so just hang in there with me, okay? If not, I'll re-live stream another separate live stream, so just stay tuned here. But one of the things I wanted to answer here is I've gotten a lot of questions that I don't really feature on the channel because they're not asked in comments or asked, either through messages, private messages, or, face-to-face with people. And I know JD's gotten this question a lot because I've asked him before, is how can you travel as much as you do? especially right now, man. It is not cheap to travel. Gas isn't cheap. Groceries are like through the freaking roof. I went to the store the other day, and you guys are probably going to scout me for this, but I love, little quick and easy snacks to take on the road with me, because I don't really eat lunch during the day, and I have to make my. Let's see, can we come back? There we go. We're back. We're back. We're back. Are we back? I think we're back. We're back. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. But yeah, ever since I retired from hockey, I have struggled with gaining weight because I quit working out all the time. I was working out all the time, and I was on a very strict diet, and I was doing a lot of different downhill on that a little bit, because hey, I got married, I was happy, and then I just started, whatever. But one of my favorite things to take on the road with me is when I travel, I take a lot of my own little snacks with me, so I'm not, breaking the bank, is because everything's expensive right now. I mean, I don't know if you've been to a grocery store, but it's horrible. And one of the things I like to take is Vienna sausages. I love them. I love barbecue ones. A lot of people it's one of those things you like or hate. And I love these things. So, I went to the grocery store the other day, and these things were $1 and something a can. Dude, they used to be like 25 cents a can. What happened? Potted meat. A lot of people, that's either want something, that's one of those things you either like or you hate, or you don't even know what I'm talking about. Basically, it's deviled ham. And, I love this stuff. Makes great little, crackers. And these things were even, $1 a can too. I mean, it was outrageous. But when I go on the road, one of the things I do to supplement the price is I'll pack my own stuff. I love little Slim Jims. It's got the Slim Jim and cheese on the other side. I'll pack one of those. I'll pack some celery, some carrots, with some ranch. I love that. Broccoli. I'd love broccoli, but, with some health issues that I've had with my stomach, I can't eat broccoli anymore raw. So I can't really have that anymore. And, but yeah, I mean, little things like that, I'll pack. And if I can't, some of the other stuff you can't take on a plane. They won't let you bring in your own drinks on planes. So a lot of the stuff I'll pack in the carry-on bag or suitcase. And when I get there, I have them, because I'm also, I don't eat lunch. I'm just not a person. I don't like eating lunch. I don't know why. If I'm out doing something, it's very hard to stop me. If I go out filming, I'm usually spending all day long filming, and I don't stop for lunch. So it's something I have to make myself do. So I just pack these little snacks and take with me. Now, another addiction that I do have is I love trying foods from all over the world. I love experiencing other cultures, other history, and I love trying foods. So, when I'm out traveling, a lot of times I will do that. I will find like a, street vendor somewhere or something. And, I love trying that stuff. This is where you find some of the best food sometimes. And it's usually a lot cheaper than going to a restaurant, and a lot better than going to McDonald's. Spending the same thing at McDonald's, might as well get something a lot better than McDonald's. But, one of the other things that I do that helps me when traveling is I'm a Marriott member, and I stay at Marriott's. I usually stay at Marriott's or Hyatt's. That's two hotels I always look for. It's a Marriott and a Hyatt. And if I don't have one of those, Airbnb is your next best choice. But I really don't like Airbnbs that much, because I'm always skeptical about what I'm going to get. So far, I've been lucky, except for once where I got someone that broke into the Airbnb, who they were tipping them off, that when you checked in and the first night they would break in and steal all your crap. Luckily, I'm smart enough to keep everything in the bedroom with me. So if they were to come in there, well, they probably would got a very, 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 very bad night ahead of them. But yeah, unfortunately, that's happened once, and I'm very skeptical of Airbnbs, and a lot of times they're not cheaper than hotel rooms, and it's just better to me to get a hotel room most of the time. But I'm a Marriott member, and I stay at Hyatt's too. But being a Marriott member, you get so many free rooms after you stay so many times or accumulate so many points. That's like New York. I think New York, my first night at Marriott is free. and I'm spending one night in Syracuse when we fly in, and then I'm going to rent a car and drive to the other parts of upstate New York I need to go to, and I'll be at another hotel there. So that really helps. My night in Syracuse is paid for because of points. So joining something like Marriott really helps. Also, I've got I fly Delta most everywhere I go, and I have a Delta card. So yeah, I get, flyer miles, things like that. I use my card at the airport. Only time I use my Delta credit card, it's points. So if you got a credit cards are great. You just have to be careful how you use them. So a lot of people say, I'm not getting a credit cards can be actually great, but you got to have the self-motivational how to use a credit card properly. And that really helps, though. That really helps in traveling, and you get a card that you can. I never forgot what JD said that he uses. JD from History Underground. And he's had a few videos in the past on it, and I forgot what he uses, but it seems like it works pretty well for him. But there you go. There's some pointers. Traveling history must be a great experience to walk through the B-17, which was shown in your last video. Yeah, so that B-17 in the last video was called the Lady Yankee, and it was bought down by the Yankee Air Museum in Michigan. I learned about this thing the last minute, and I was invited to go at the last minute. And I was supposed to fly, but the weather was horrible, as you saw in the episode. It was raining. I don't know if you could really see it as good on there as it was in person, but the weather was bad. But we got an awesome walkthrough on that plane, and I'm gonna tell you what, that was the first time I've ever stepped on the B-17. That was a cross off the bucket list for myself. And when I entered that plane, I had a lot of expectations. But what I did not expect was that plane to be so small. And it really puts into perspective of how those guys, what those guys had to deal with when they're on those planes, flying missions. There was not a lot of room to move around, and as you saw in the episode, I couldn't even fit through one of the doors, which was horribly embarrassing. One of the most embarrassing experiences I believe I've ever had in my entire life, because the pilot was laughing his, katoosh off at me. I mean, it was bad. I mean, I literally stepped through the hatch, and it wasn't happening, man. It was not happening. So, yeah, it was a cool experience, though. I mean, being able to sit on the B-17 bomber in the same spot that guys sat on those things during World War II, and to get their perspective was pretty cool. And it's something I recommend everyone to do, because the things running through my mind in that moment were too numerous to even list. I mean, it was a lot of feelings. I mean, it was excitement. It was a feeling of compassion for those guys. It was a feeling of dread. It was a feeling of, it's sadness too, when you sit there and you think about what those guys had to go through in those B-17 bombers and how little of a space they had to work with. And you can just imagine, having a fighter on your tail or coming straight at you, and he's firing his machine guns, and you're sitting inside of a little bitty freaking glass bubble, either on the bottom, top, or on the front or back of this plane, with a machine gun in front of you, trying to shoot back something that looks like a pinprick. I mean, with bullets flying at you in a little glass bubble. I mean, what, 10,000 foot up in the air? I mean, that had to be an awful experience. And an experience I never, ever, ever even imagined about, having for myself. Much less those guys were living through it at 20, 30 missions at a time. I mean, man, no wonder. They always talk about the life expectancy of pilots during World War II. It's not very good. You've got a 10% chance of coming home, if that. And I've always heard that. Reading, stuff, watching stuff, I've always heard that. But until I stepped in that B-17 bomber, I never really grasped that. I mean, you think about it, you're like, oh, that's crazy odds. Of course, it couldn't have been that bad. Yeah, I mean, you step into a B-17 bomber, you see why. Because it was just absolutely horrible working conditions. And on top of it, these guys can't breathe at a lot of the altitudes that they're going to without having oxygen mask on. And then to make it even worse, with this space and the lack of oxygen, they had to endure frostbite, which is something I never even thought of. The pilot was explaining to us that up at the altitudes that plane would go, it could drop down to negative 20 or even 30 degrees at times, maybe even lower. And that's not something you even think about. So those guys on the machine guns hanging out the side of that plane did not have a window. They were exposed to the air, which was negative 20 or 30 degrees, getting frostbite. I mean, they're having really bad frostbite. That's something I never thought about whenever I was thinking about those planes. And, you know, having the lack of oxygen, getting frostbite, working confined spaces, having bullets flying at you at 20,000 foot up in the air, and flak going off all around you. I mean, I couldn't imagine. So, stepping in that B-17 was an experience, and I recommend you guys doing it for yourself if you can ever do it. And even if you got to drive hours to go do it, I recommend it, because it's definitely something that's worth it. I will tell you that it's worth it. So even though we didn't fly in it, I feel like I got a full experience. And to be honest, I was kind of scared of flying in it after the unfortunate events of another B-17 in Texas. And I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. So I was kind of scared to fly in that thing. So it was it was something I was fighting with on the way there, and I was kind of relieved that it did get canceled, because that was going through my mind a heck of a lot, and I didn't want to wind up, you know, like the B-17 did in Texas. That just has me really scared. But I'm sure it would have been an awesome experience, but I don't know if I'm ever going to have that experience, but we'll see. Maybe one day I can overcome the fear and face that fear and fly in a B-17. So, but that was a cool experience, being able to go in there, and I'm happy if that's all I ever get to experience, and I never get to experience flying in one, because it definitely put into perspective what I was wanting to feel. And hopefully that relayed to you guys in that episode a little bit. So it was one of the most fun episodes I've ever made on this channel, I will say that. And it was one of the neatest experiences I believe I've ever been able to take you guys along for. So, yeah, it was a neat episode. Well, guys, we are pulling into Pensacola, Florida now. I have got to get on the Navy base, and they're going to handcuff me and maybe throw me in the brig if they see me on a phone while driving. So I'm going to get off here. I'm going to continue our day filming this new episode of History Saver for Fort Barrancas and Pensacola, Florida. Later this week, we will be flying on Saturday to New York, so you'll see more content from there. And yeah, it's going to be a wild ride in a very long next 2 weeks. And there is a lot of stuff coming your way. More live streams, more posts, more videos. Savannah, Charleston, be looking out for episodes this week of Savannah. We get back on that as I now think I have a little bit more time to edit now. And to get back in that game that I need to be in for that. And I apologize about the break in the American Revolutionary War series there in Savannah. But as most of you guys know, it's been a really, really hard week. So we are going to press forward. We're going to jump in with both feet on the ground and jump in head first. We are headed to Pensacola, Florida to visit our buddy, historian John Weaver, who's going to take us through the history of Fort Barrancas, and I am running late. So we're going to get on base, and we are going to have some fun today, bring you an episode from Fort Barrancas in Pensacola, Florida at some point. Don't know for sure when it'll be, honestly, but it'll be in the very near future. And then we have Savannah coming and more from Charleston as well concerning the American Revolutionary War. Then we leave for upstate New York on Saturday for Fort Stanowitz, Fort Ontario, Fort Bull, and tons of other places. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel, share the channel with your friends. And another thing, guys, before I get off here, thank all of you guys so much for all the messages. I can't tell you how much it meant to me, and it yeah, thank you. That's the only thing I can say, and I really appreciate it. So pushing forward, well, a lot of stuff coming. All right, let's get off here and get on a Navy base. Until next time, guys, keep preserving history. Stay safe. I'll see you soon. Maybe later on today. If not, maybe later this week. So I'll try to give you a heads up. Sometimes it's not the case like this live stream. So, but anyway, we're going to continue on. Join in on the journey on the next episode. We'll see you then.